about our candidate, Howie Hawkins. There are other candidates. Maybe I'll go over talking about them. I think when we do the Green New Deal, they will be mentioned and such. They're just not the established campaigners that Howie is. So they just have shortcomings in that way. And they spent the first, like last year, the opening campaign attacking him, saying he has unfair advantages. Well, I think his advantage is that he's an established Green Party activist who's been around for 30 years. So I guess that's unfair if you're just getting into it, or you've been a Green Party activist for 5 years and you just don't have that big social network to raise money and get yourself established. Okay, live. Check out the live stream on Facebook page, 3lefts show. Am I close enough? Let's get closer. Okay, so for the rest of the hour, most of the hour, I have another thing to read. And I have other articles that I could be sharing. I'll get to them if there's time, but this is going to take a bit. It's basically Howie's response to the letter from Noam Chomsky and other left-wing academics. Many I like, many I enjoy, and I respect their opinion, but just not on strategy. They're really great at talking about socialism and just mindsets and ideology. Hell, we wouldn't be able to have a conversation about how the ruling class influences our opinions without Chomsky. He's essential, even for those that aren't as radical as me. So it hurts a little. It hurts a little when he says that the activism you're doing just is getting in the way. But here is his very recent, very fresh response. Every state is a battleground. Howie Hawkins' response to an open letter to the Green Party about the 2020 election strategy. He covers a lot of things here. He makes a lot of strong points. He usually dilly-dallies and takes too long. This is longer, but I think as I was reading it and reviewing it last night, it was all meaty. I was just completing a response to the first version of Michael Albert's An Open Letter to the Green Party, which was called Dear Howie Hawkins, Green Sense and Nonsense, at the earlier part of the month, when the new open letter reached me. So I respond to this group version instead. I doubt that we are going to persuade each other at this point. After all, I have been back and forth with many of the people expressing these opinions in previous elections on the Safe States proposal. The signers want the Green Party presidential ticket to campaign only in safe states where the outcome is a foregone conclusion, and support the Democratic presidential ticket in battleground states where the race will be close between the two ruling party candidates. Michael Albert was one of the early proponents of that approach in 2004 with his article Election Plan, August 2003. I wrote several responses at the time to the safe state strategy advocated by Michael and others, including signers of this open letter. After the election, I compiled many of those statements in a controversy in the book Independent Politics, Green Party Strategy Debate, published by Haymarket in 2006. Some of us had another exchange in June 2016 on the question Michael Albert wrote, "We need a united left." Bill Fletcher, where Fletcher replies on left unity, and then Howie responded with his own response. Are you keeping track? Let's see. I took notes on because I did actually peruse those articles as well. Let's see. Yeah, so his previous was a lesser evil. Let's see. Albert versus Hawkins is what my note says. Pretty much. Oh yeah. So it's called "We Need a United Left," and Albert's case was that a united left is one that works contextually and supports the best possible outcome, which in his argument was a Clinton presidency. Okay. And Howie's response was actually some things that he says in this one. So actually, I don't need to backtrack, do I? But just to point out that these arguments have occurred before every time. So it's kind of why they haven't let go of this Green Party is a spoiler, or that we hurt the Democrats by running. I laid out with that other article why that isn't the case, and how he revisits it and expands on them. Their open letter response to my article, "The Green Party is not the Democrats' problem," they published in Christmas of last year, conflates what I said in my article with what they claim Jill Stein and the Green Party said in 2016. Jill and other Greens may want to respond for themselves, but I will respond here with my views, speaking for myself. What is different this time around? Well, the two capitalist party system stranglehold on U.S. politics has not changed. The safe state strategy the open letter writers advocate does not challenge that stranglehold. It accepts it as a given. They argue that Trump is what is different this time around. He's a special danger. We have heard that many times before with Goldwater, Nixon, Reagan, and the Bushes. The left can't outsource, so part one, the left can't outsource fighting the right to the Democrats. So his major arguments is that our opponents kind of in the left, or rather our critics is fair, they're using the same old arguments that go back literally 100 years. We fight the right better than the Dems do. And the Dems themselves enable the right because they are center right. And I'm going to add and preface that you can't ironically be something. So in recent years, like the most strongest possible example is you have these chuds, these edgy teenagers who are ironically Nazis. Like, they're not really neo-Nazis, they're not really racist, but they're going to use racist rhetoric, they're going to use neo-Nazi symbols, they're going to engage and show up on neo-Nazi platforms, but they're all doing it to be edgy and mess with people they consider boring and square and make fun of people. It's like, oh, you're taking me seriously when I say we should have we should kill all the blacks? What? How silly of you! You're ridiculous. I'm so funny. Now that's an extreme example, but it also carries that you can't ironically be something. When the argument is we're going to run as Democrats as left-wingers, and we're going to use the ruling party platform to do good things, that carries the same logic to me as we're going to ironically be Democrats, center-right, to do what we want, to pass our agenda. I think that's cuckoo. I think that's unsensible. So reading Howie's response. They say Greens refuse to recognize the special danger of Trump, and that Greens say that there is no difference between the Democrats and Republicans. Now, granted, there's a lot of rhetoric about how there's no difference between Democrats and Republicans. I played my number 3 intro, which includes Lewis Black, comedian Lewis Black, with his bit about how the Republicans, so the two-party system is a bowl of crap looking in the mirror. Now, despite this rhetoric, which to me is a bit hollow, as well as other kind of calls and all those other, that 40% of voters that want a minor party, they want to join something, they never do. They never form their own minor party. They treat voting like buying toothpaste. They're waiting for some other entity to create it. It's like, oh, I so want this product, and boom, the market has provided it. That's not how politics works, because banks don't bankroll minor parties. They bankroll the parties that do their bidding. So a minor party that people want, that isn't monopolistic, that does work for them, will it has to have ground support. So I feel a little hollow when, say, Lewis Black will say that the Democrats and Republicans are the same, but and certainly his values align with the Green Party. He's certainly left-leaning. Why hasn't he joined a workers' party? Why doesn't he campaign with Greens, or at least just come out as Viggo Mortensen, actor Viggo Mortensen, said he was going to vote for Jill Stein? A simple omission of that is a left support to at least signal to me that you're serious. Otherwise, it's just all a joke to say, yeah, they're both the same, but I'm not going to do anything about it. Just nihilistic, not vote at all, or keep voting for the Democrat. After all, they are the lesser evil. Okay, quite a tangent there. Told you this would take me a while. I did not say in any article of my own, Howie says, nor in 2016 or ever, that Trump was not a special danger. In my view, Trump's racism, corruption, and narcissistic sociopathy make him, and not just a man with bad policies, but a bad man. Orange man bad. He was the greater evil compared to Clinton. He is a greater evil than previous Republican presidents. He is an ever-present danger right now in office. What is different about Trump from previous Republicans is his vicious public scapegoating, which has given permission for increased covert discrimination by institutional gatekeepers and has triggered open slurs, vandalism, and violence by white supremacists or nationalists against immigrants, Muslims, Jews, people of color, LGBTQ, so on, and women. Recognizing the danger of Trump does not mean that electing any damn Democrat should trump all other considerations. The Democrats might beat Trump, but they won't beat Trumpism. The Democrats should have crushed Trump in a landslide in 2016 because the hard right, regardless of what the Green Party was doing, because the hard right Republicans he reflects are a shrinking political minority. That's why all of the standard Republicans have to fall in line with Trump. They don't have a political base to depend on anymore. No one wants to actually vote for them. Like, conservatives vote for them in their states because they see them as a lesser evil compared to Democrats. That's how messed up it is. Everyone is in the same mindset, and they got to get out of it. Okay, I feel like I'm not close enough to the mic now. But in the U.S., Democrats have lost many state governments and federal offices to Republicans, which help keep the right in power even though their base is shrinking. In office, the Democrats join the Republicans to support basic policies of the capitalist class that they care about. This is economic austerity at home and neocon imperialism abroad. Most working people don't vote because neither major party is credible to them on issues of peace and prosperity. Instead of depending on the soft right Dems to fight the hard right Republicans, the most effective way to fight the right is to build an independent left movement and party with its own program, its own actions, its own candidates. That is the priority of my presidential campaign. It's the same logic I use in doing my show in this community radio station. It's not ours unless it's ours. Our own radio station, our own media, our own journalism. Why are we depending on Hearst? Why are we depending on megacorps to deliver information to us? We can't trust them. No one does. It's all bias. We have a bias, but we need media that represents it. We need parties that represent our biases. In office, the Democrats joined the Republicans to support the... Okay, I just read that. As I campaigned, I discussed the differences between the two parties and the extreme danger of Trump. So we're not... He himself, Howie himself, is not doing the, they're both the same, so whatever. That's what other people say. There are all kinds of people online and in public who say these things. And they're not totally wrong, but yeah, it's not nuanced enough either. But Howie and other Greens aren't that. That's putting words in our mouth to say we're all saying the They're both the same, so whatever. We draw distinctions between the Dems and Trump. I point out that Sanders is far closer to the Greens on many issues than all the rest of the Dems. See example, his own article, Which Green New Deal? Recognizing these distinctions does not lead me to support one capitalist party over another, or to support Sanders, who is recruiting independent socialists and progressives into said major party. He is misrepresenting socialism as New Deal liberalism. He is again committed to supporting whoever the Democratic nominee is, setting himself up for a repeat of 4 years ago. One difference among the Democrats is that the corporate wing will not commit to returning the favor to support Sanders. Just as Obama has made it known that he is opposed to Sanders' nomination, Hillary Clinton recently and very publicly refused to say whether she would support Sanders if he is the nominee. The signers of this letter seem to have bigger problems inside the Dem Party than they do with Greens. Their safe state strategy wants the Green Party to accept the same powerless relationship of one-way collaboration with the Democratic Party that the corporate Democrats want from Sanders progressives. You have to support us, but we're not going to support you. Indeed, the Democrats do all they can to keep Greens off the ballot and out of candidate forums and debates. They basically smear Greens as candidates groomed by Russians and Republicans, as Clinton recently did to Jill Stein on the former Obama campaign manager, David Plouffe's podcast. That's the one referenced before where she said Tulsi Gabbard is a Russian asset too. And Stein definitely was. Definitely. All because of a picture in Moscow. Jesus Christ. Trump's racism is nothing new. The Republicans have been mobilizing around the white backlash to black civil rights since Goldwater. They mobilize resentment against many targets, all people of color, immigrants, Muslims, women, queer, and peace environmental advocates, even if they themselves are conservative. As soon as you start opposing pipelines, you're on the other team, the enemy. The Democrats have taken for granted the support of these targets of scapegoating while delivering very little for them. Between elections, the Democrats don't fight the Republicans, they collaborate with them on economic and foreign policies, which leaves social policies as the thing that we care about, or the only thing we're allowed to care about. That's crime, that's criminal. Part 2, moving quickly. Independent left politics is more powerful. So here's a case for doing things not that way. The signers note that I say in my article that the Greens want to get Trump out as much as anybody. Then they ask, how can it be that if Greens would vote for a Green candidate and not for Sanders, Warren, or any Democrat in a contested state, knowing that doing so could mean a Trump victory? Well, that can be because there are stronger ways to fight Trump than waiting for the Democrats to beat Trump in the 2020 election. Trump is dangerous now. The Democrats should have impeached him long ago. So here's Howie's tongue lashing about impeachment. He's not a Russiagator. There are people on the left who's criticized. It's actually what his opponents in the Green Party primary are basically like. Their line of attack is he's a Russiagator because he believes that Trump should be impeached. I think that's weird. But here's this case that doesn't depend on Russiagate at all. It really doesn't. They had a chance at the end of this first year in office when Representative Al Green of Texas introduced articles of impeachment for Trump's racist statements, actions, and policies. Only 58 Democrats supported him. It is no accident that the majority of representatives who called for Trump's impeachment were Asian, Black, and Latino until the summer of last year. The Democratic Speaker of the House, Pelosi, kept saying impeachment would be divisive while Trump was deliberately dividing the nation every day with his policies and provocations. Trump was committing crimes in plain sight from the moment he took office. He also should have been impeached for corrupt self-enriching, allowments, nepotism, campaign finance felonies, inciting violence by white nationalists, other atrocities against migrants at the border, war crimes, like every president, gutting federal regulations and agencies, constant obstruction of justice. Instead, the Dems have belatedly chosen to go small instead of big by impeaching him on the Ukraine extortion scheme and cover-up, as if all his other crimes are acceptable. Instead of beating Trump up politically on multiple grounds for a protracted period of time, the Democrats have given Trump a short Senate trial peppered with militaristic messaging in support of the U.S. proxy war with Russia in Ukraine. Because truly, Trump's crime here is that he was undermining that effort. The Democrats' short, narrow, and often jingoistic impeachment, that he's a traitor to the country. It's traitorous. That's Trump's crime. It's not the war crimes. It's not starving migrants at the border. It's undermining war with Russia. That's why I'm mad about it. Trial fails to show the people, generally the public, how Trump's crimes hurt them as workers, consumers, minorities, and women. How he's undermined peace. The trial does none of that, right? The argument with the trial is that he's a traitor and he undermines our foreign policy. This does not make Trump into the bad guy to Americans. He's the bad guy to the military-industrial complex. He's the bad guy to the deep state. This is not undermining him. That's the argument. Now, this is typical for how Democrats enabled Trumpism itself. Democratic support for bipartisan militarism abroad enabled Trump to successfully appeal to voters who want to end the endless wars, although that was, of course, a big lie. Decades-long Democratic support for pro-corporate economic policies has created the growing economic inequality and insecurity that has provided the backdrop for Trump and the Republicans to expand their base among downwardly mobile whites with racist, xenophobic, misogynistic scapegoating. Previous Democratic administrations refused to prosecute corporate criminals who stole 14 million homes or the war criminals who tortured people. It boils my blood whenever I just think of Obama just shrugging his shoulders and saying, "We tortured some folks." That was the end of it. And that's your hero? The lesser evil. Okay. Let's see. The Democrats left them walking free, and they walked right into the Trump administration. Right? All these cast of villains. They should have been in jail. Why are they in jail? For some details of this, see my own article, The Rich White Man's Justice System Protects Trump and His Cronies. The Democrats have helped to normalize Trump by joining with him to overwhelmingly vote for 3 consecutive increases to the Pentagon budget, including more than he has even asked for. They joined with him to enact the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Trade Agreement, the new NAFTA. They joined with Trump in their silence or cheerleading for the prosecution of Julian Assange, persecution of Chelsea Manning, and another Espionage Act case that threatens the press freedom of every news organization because they all depend on leaks to get the news about what the government is actually doing. The left will be more powerful if it makes its demands independently, and here's the meat, of either pro-corporate, pro-war. That is what it did in the anti Vietnam War movement. We demanded out now to every politician. This is how his direct personal experience, because just like Bernie, he was there. And it's Bernie's experience. It's why he's been an independent all of his career. Demands the agenda, nothing less. We didn't shut down our demonstrations and dilute our slogans to support Eugene McCarthy and Robert Kennedy, who were calling for negotiations rather than immediate withdrawal. Some did go clean for Gene or for RFK. But the anti-war movement in the streets said there would be nothing to negotiate. We kept our demand out now. That set the agenda. Not in the negotiations now position of Johnson and Humphrey as well as McCarthy and McKennedy that they had. We did not say, wait until November to vote for the lesser evil. By making its demands independently, the anti-Vietnam War movement remains strong and clear in its demand. We now know that we stopped Nixon's secret plan to end the war using nuclear weapons against North Vietnam, with a link to that in this article. The Vietnam Memorandum and mobilization demonstrations of millions in October and November of '69 convinced Nixon to back off or face popular backlash that would destroy his presidency. Perhaps in '68 we drew the lesson from '64 when the SDS's slogan of "part of the way with LBJ" captured the sentiment of most of the left. They got what they wanted. LBJ won. He immediately and massively escalated the war. We lost the war on poverty in the jungles of Vietnam. Compare '68 to 2004, when anybody but Bush took hold in the anti-Iraq war movement. I was a teenager at the time, personally. United for Peace and Justice adopted the slogan against the Bush agenda. Not the war agenda, Bush agenda. Which, as a young man, I took as everything that's wrong is the Bush administration. So when Obama won, I was expecting the Bush administration to be overturned, the Bush agenda, right? None of it was overturned. Only little snippets of it via executive order, easily overturned by Trump. Continuing. So against the Bush agenda meant vote for pro-war candidate, the lesser evil who said that he could fight the war better than Bush. After Kerry's loss, the anti-war movement was disoriented. It could mount little protest as the Democratic Speaker, still then Nancy Pelosi, working with her Republican counterpart, made sure that the supplemental war budgets were voted through in the spring so that the Iraq war funding would not become a campaign issue that fall. After Obama was elected in '08, most of the anti-war movement went home, even though Obama's continued the old wars in Afghanistan and Iraq and got into new ones in Libya, Syria, and Yemen. What changed was Obama's wars were less visible. He replaced many U.S. ground troops in direct combat roles with local proxies, contracted mercenaries, drone assassinations, jet fighter strikes, and special ops. Cool stuff. The progressive left continued to that demobilization in the anti-war movement by saying the most important thing was to elect a Democratic president instead of independently advancing its own demands to both parties. So voting blue no matter who. What do we get? Less harm? I need a case for that. That isn't some equivocation. Okay, now for some nuts and bolts. Okay, so this is the kind of part of the response, which is like, do you know what we're dealing with here? Like we're like knee deep in excrement here. And it's also, the next part is the case that the center, the Democrats, they fight the left as much as the right. We're fighting both parties. And joining one of them, so they're not directly fighting you, is, well, to be blunt, the coward's way out. Like I was kind of saying before, like you're working for them. You're helping them, and you get nothing in return. Only that you are not being attacked. So I guess that's what you get. You're not being directly oppressed. Well, that's fine if you're an academic, if you have a good career, if you're middle class. But that doesn't help all the people that are oppressed either way, that aren't in opposition to the status quo, but trampled by it. Water break. The signers of the open letter say that after the summer, the Green Party presidential ticket can easily abandon its campaign in the battleground states. It is not easy. It is not even possible. By that time, the green ticket will already be on the ballot. It is too late by then to get off the ballot. So, kind of ignoring of the rules and how campaigns are done and how our election system actually works. That's usually ignored, or it's just a kind of ignorance that it's not mentioned. It's a mistake. It's just a mistake, an oversight. No, nothing malicious behind it. I'm not being sarcastic. It's just a mistake to just like, I don't understand the election system. I'm going to tell you how you should be interacting with it. The Green Party part of its existence is interacting with the election system, and basically figuring out or encountering just how terrible it is. Let's go into how. But first, enact like strong questions in response to their questions. Which states will be the contested states? The open letter says 10. Many analysts say closer to 15. Some states will go in and out of contested status with the ups and downs of the polls during the campaign. How do the safe states strategists determine now which of the states the Greens are supposed to stay off the ballot? Any candidate seeking the Green presidential nomination who refused to petition and campaign in the 20 to 30% of those states might be contested, would not get the Green nomination at the convention. Because generally, our criteria for who is the Green Party presidential candidate is, are they a good campaigner? Are they campaigning? Are they campaigning in a lot of places? At least that's my criteria. The reason why Howie's inter-party competition, I'm not like I want to support them, but they're not doing enough. They're not campaigning as hard or as in many places as Howie. I think they're attempting to, but here's where it becomes just unfair on how unfair our election system is. Howie has advantages. He's older. He has more experience. He has more people helping him. He's a veteran fundraiser. The others aren't. They have the same chutzpah. They have good platforms. Some of them have great charisma. Probably even more than Howie. But there's an inequality, and that sucks. It sucks. It sucks in any election race. It sucks all across the board. It's our entire system. It's our entire society. It sucks. Trying to change it. We recognize it. The signature and other requirements to get Green Party candidates, or rather any minor party candidates, on the ballot are off the charts, more difficult in the U.S. than any other electoral democracy in the world. The Green Party is qualified for the ballot in 20 states and D.C. Greens are now petitioning to get over 1 million signatures needed to get safely on other 30 states as well. Greens who knock themselves out of petitioning to qualify, Greens who knock themselves out, work themselves hard, petitioning to qualify the Green Party for their state ballot are not going to abandon their campaign in the fall, especially when ballot access for the next election cycle depends on the Green presidential vote in that state. So this is where an attack on our campaign in every state kind of strategy, which should be a no-brainer. It's what Clinton didn't do in 2016. That contextual voting isn't unifying the left because it is anti-green. It is excluding what we're doing. Because we need to build opposition everywhere. It's saying that people in these contested states, which again is debatable which states are contestable or not, let's continue. Got to run out of time. Georgia is now considered a swing state based on the 2018 Abrams-Kemp gubernatorial contest and 2020 presidential polling. Georgia has some of the most restrictive ballot access laws in the country. While Democrats and Republicans do not have to petition on the ballot, Green candidates must submit tens of thousands of signatures. 1% of voters for statewide office, 5% for district offices. And he goes into all the data and the details in all of that. All these rules were put in place to keep the Communist Party, then in the 40s, the major minor party, off the ballot, which was more about keeping African Americans from voting. Because at the time, Democratic primaries were all white, and the Republican lily white factions being challenged by African American double V for victory campaign against fascism abroad and segregation at home. Now, who out there know about the double V for victory campaign? I think I've heard of it before, but in passing. And so, again, if the 2020 Green presidential ticket gets a vote of 1% of registered voters, the Georgia Green Party will get party status and enable them to put up statewide candidates and, continue to fight and be in opposition, an actual opposition in Georgia. Pennsylvania is a battleground state by all accounts. The Green ticket will need 2% of the vote to secure a ballot line for the next election cycle. For Greens in Pennsylvania, the state is indeed a battleground. It's a constant battle with Democrats as well as Republicans. Greens are fighting the Democrats over fracking and the hundreds of miles of new gas pipelines to supply the proposed Appalachia Storage and Trading Hub, a massive petrochemical infrastructure complex that will lock us into decades of fracked gas and oil as feedstock for the production of plastic that is not biodegradable. They have long battled the Democrats in Philadelphia, who have partnered with state Republicans to close dozens of public schools and replace them with charter schools. Pennsylvania Greens don't want to sacrifice their ability to actually oppose these things against pro-fracking, pro-charter Dems for another election cycle. If we went through every state, safe or battleground, in the 2020 presidential election, we would find every one of them is a battleground for the Green Party. Now, close aside, in language, Howie uses the Green Party because he's talking about Greens. Green activists is who he talks to. I'm a bit broader than that. I think you could substitute any mention of Green Party in this article, if it's not including elections themselves, for an independent left, or just the left. The left needs to be its own thing. It needs to be oppositional to the rest of the political spectrum, right? Now, not in the kind of opposition like we want to kill them all, or we gotta destroy them, or we gotta dominate and be authoritarian. But as far as we need to have our own side, right? I mean, we feel like one of the basics of communication is to advocate for yourself, to know what your needs are. And to do otherwise is to be in an abusive relationship, which many consider their relationship to the Democratic Party as. So, part 3, for Greens, states are battleground states. The safe states are not safe for Greens. So here's where, but again, substitute Greens for the left, right? That's what I'm doing in my head because that's what we're talking about here. That's what Howie's talking about. He's just putting in the context of the election and Green Party. But to me, the Greens are sidelined, Michael Brooks and Sam Cedar. They're so dismissive. They're jokers. They're comedians first, I guess. I don't know, but it hurts. It angers me the way they talk divisively about basically independent left strategy. They just constantly harangue about the need to work with the Democrats. It's their only game in town. But at the same time, they'll also say we need to do all the other independent organizing stuff, as if these things don't conflict. But they do. Examples. The safe states are not safe for Greens. Take Michael Albert's safe state of Massachusetts. In '98, citizens petitioned to put an initiative referendum on the ballot for public campaign financing that won in a landslide, 60% to 30%. The overwhelmingly Democratic legislature refused to fund it. That was the last straw for a former Reform Democrat who became a Green named Jill Stein. Or take my safe state of New York. The Democrats just enacted a law designed to kill third parties in New York by increasing the vote needed to maintain ballot status by 2.5 times and tripling the petition signatures needed to get back on the ballot should one lose it. That includes the Working Family Party, the Greens, and now the Libertarians. There's also the Conservative and the Independence Party. Now, when asked about this, the Dem leadership says, well, we just want to go after the fake parties, working families, conservative, and independents, because they just cross-endorse, right? They rarely run their own people. They do sometimes. Now, that is hollow, enraging rhetoric, because they're not targeting fake parties. They're targeting all parties that aren't the Democrats, making New York truly a one-party state. Is this democracy? Is this fairness, justice? Is this friendship? And this is not just an attack on minor parties, it is an attack on the left, because it's basically saying that if you want to get anything done, you have to run in our center-left party. Because when it comes to the leadership, that's what they are. And there's a assumption we can replace them as progressive Dems or as a left-wing Dems. And it's not how it works. It's not how it's ever worked. We'll continue. If only I had more time. Let's see. Examples. On affordable housing issues, Greens are fighting Dems in every state and city they control. The Dems are thick as thieves with their banker and real estate developer campaign donors in escalating rents, gentrifying, displacing, as well as homelessness. As Trump himself was with the Democratic machine in New York before he ran for president. Greens in every state are fighting Democrats every day, and by Greens, the left, on fracking, oil and gas pipelines, single payer, gentrification, displacement, private public school support, living wages, police brutality, on and on. Greens, the left, want a presidential candidate who campaigns. Rather, the Greens want for the left a presidential candidate who campaigns in their states in support of their local candidates and causes. They want to vote for a green presidential alternative to the two-party system of corporate rule. Only Stein went to Standing Rock. For the Greens, all 50 states and the D.C. are battlegrounds. The Signer Safe States proposal asks Greens in 20 to 30% of the country to campaign for the same party that they are fighting every day. They want us to tell voters with a straight face to vote Green down ticket, but Democratic at the top of it. Of course, in every one of those down ticket races, Green candidates are attacked by Dems as a spoiler who is splitting their votes. Greens splitting the Democratic vote is what the signers claim the Greens did in 2016 when they say that if Stein had not run in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, Clinton would have won. That is not really true. CBS polling asked Stein voters who they would have voted for if the ballot only had been Clinton or Trump. 60% said they would have stayed home. 25%, a quarter, said they would vote for Clinton. 14% for Trump. Run those numbers for Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, and you find that Trump still would have won all three states. Of course, there are unlikely scenarios where the Green vote could be the margin of difference in the presidential race. The signers are asking the Green Party to campaign for Dems when they haven't even tried to defend their own vote or correct rampant election irregularities. Now let's get into what losers the Democrats are in defending democracy and the integrity of our elections. In 2000, Al Gore called off demonstrations to continue the recount in Florida after the U.S. Supreme Court stopped the recount and appointed Bush. A consortium of news organizations did a thorough statewide recount and found that Gore had won Florida after all. In 2004, after Kerry refused to contest voter suppression, voting machine problems, and other irregularities in Ohio, it was the Green candidate then, David Cobb, who spearheaded a recount in Ohio that led to a U.S. House Judiciary Committee report that exposed the wide disenfranchisement of Black and Latino voters and to reforms in a few states. What are Dems doing about this? Nothing. Nothing. The same thing happened in 2016. So basically, this is an argument that he's not quite making explicitly, but it's been made by other Greens and himself in the past, that if you don't want the Greens to be a spoiler, then reform the elections. Make them fair. Make them not first past the post. Make them ranked choice ballot. Make them with runoffs. Make it so that the spoiler argument is truly moot, not applicable. Do they do any of that? No. Do they make elections fair so that whoever you are, you can run fairly? No, they don't. They do nothing. Do they even make the election systems accountable? No, they do nothing. That's what angers me when they say what I'm doing is wrong. Green Party shouldn't exist. Green Party isn't not ineffective, irrelevant. Right? We're both simultaneously irrelevant and have no impact, and we're not fighting any fight. We're not being in opposition. In fact, we're helping Republicans, but at the same time, we're also costing the election. So it's twists and turns. Same thing happened last cycle. The Stein campaign sought recounts in the battleground states Clinton lost and they exposed voting irregularities. There are times where during the recount, Clinton had more votes than the original count. Stein went, like in some counties, went from 0 votes to hundreds of votes. There were votes that were just not being counted. Our lawsuits, Green Party lawsuits, did that. Some Russian asset actually investigating our voting irregularities. That's not something the Dems do. That's something the opposition does. The left. A left that fights for itself. And I think that's the title of a Zero Books publication called A Left for Itself. Beyond just the performative feel-good voting and activism, which is sort of a projection what is said about Greens. Real solutions. The signers claim voting Green in a swing state is a feel-good activity, as if fear of climate disaster, for example, shouldn't be a motivator in political action. That's quoting Chomsky from the letter. I think I skipped that part. This is condescending and disrespectful to say that Greens are political dilettantes who cast votes just to feel good. We vote to advance our program of system change. We don't waste our vote affirming Democrats like Clinton personified the elite consensus of neoliberal economics and neocon imperialism. The climate crisis is a prime reason why Greens don't support Democrats. The last Democratic administration, all the above energy policy, was a euphemism for fracking the hell out of the country. Obama still brags about how the U.S. has become a world's largest oil and gas producer. He brags about it. Clinton, as Secretary of State, promoted fracking globally. She had her delegates in the DMC vote against all climate policies proposed by Bill McKibben, a major activist, on behalf of the Sanders campaign. The one Sanders plate that was adopted was, of course, 2 years later reversed, which recommitted the party to taking fossil fuel industry money and went back on the record for all of the above energy. The language that Sanders and McKibben got through their, inside-out strategy was removed, gone, like they never did it. Wasted effort. You say my wasted effort is wasted? I'm seeing a lot of wasted effort on your part too. Trump calls climate change a hoax, but the Democrats act like it's a hoax. The signers continue, saying real solutions require Trump out of office. Real solutions will become far more probable with Sanders and Warren in office. Real solutions will become somewhat more probable, whatever that means, with the likes of Biden in office. Yes, let's be realistic. The Democrats are not going to bring us Medicare for all, Green New Deal, deep cuts and war, or national popular vote for president with ranked choice voting. Medicare for all in 4 states now, Hawaii, California, Vermont, and last year here in New York, After Democratic state legislators passed single-payer legislation when they did not control both houses and the governor, when they did, single-payer could have been enacted, but they stopped supporting it. When Obama convened a very public summit to discuss healthcare options in March '09, the lead sponsor of the Expanded and Improved Medicaid for All Act, Connors, made a personal request to Obama to attend. Obama said no, until relenting at the last minute after much protest. The bill that became the Affordable Care Act was drafted by insurance industry hacks in a Democrat-controlled Senate committee. And it goes on and on and on about how the Dems just, even when elected, do not advance solutions. And the left is continuing to not advance solutions either. Does it help the left to have a Democratic president in office? I'm not sure. I don't have a definitive yes or no. Does it hurt the left to have a Republican in office? I don't think so. My conclusion is it doesn't matter. Whether it's a Democratic president or a Republican president, the left has to be its own thing if it's going to advance its platform. If community activists, they know they have to act independently and put the pressure on the Democrats on their city council. There's always a lesser evil. He goes back all the way to the interwar years. Makes a powerful lesser evil argument. No lesser evil. There's always a lesser evil. As he mentioned in the beginning, every Republican president before they were elected was a great danger that needed to be prevented. And when a dangerous Republican is prevented, what happens? Does the country move leftward? No, neoliberalism continues. Austerity continues. The Obama administration committed to austerity. They did it. They did it because of the crash caused by the Bush administration. But let's freaking face it. There was no Democratic opposition to subprime lenders. There was no Democratic opposition to deregulating the banks. The bank deregulations occurred in the Clinton administration. It's a continuity. There's a continuity between administrations. There's a continuity in our political system. There's a continuity in everything. All is one. One is all. Getting philosophical here, but you need some good philosophy. Well, damn it. I've reached the end of the show. I took too long. Couldn't rush through. He mentions, let's jump to the last paragraph, last minute. We are running out of time to address the life or death issues of the climate crisis. The nuclear arms race, the growing economic inequality. That have become a survival issue for working people, whose life expectancies are now declining. We don't have time to march in place with a safe state strategy to elect a lesser evil Democrat. If the Democrats again give us a dismal choice between a corporate Dem and Trump and lose again because they cannot get their natural base to vote for them, it will be their fault, not the fault of the left. The left for itself. Or in this case, the Greens. This is Dan Platt. I am a Green Party member because I'm a lefty, and I'm proud to say it. I don't hide. I don't obfuscate. Okay, I'm going to go over to do my housekeeping because I want to tell you guys how to get in contact with me. I have social media both on Twitter and Facebook. 3 Left Show. The 3 Left Show? I think it's just 3 Left Show. Numeral 3 Left Show. The website, which is an archive for all previous episodes. This will be 67. Is 3lefts.news, nothing else. I have a Patreon if you'd like to materially support the show. When things are set up here, we will have a membership drive, so keep that on your mind that this radio station needs members, just as Organizations that actually support you and work for you also need your membership. It is not like buying toothpaste. It is not like you donate once and, well, they'll remember me. They'll fight for me. Or I'm giving them money because I support what they're doing. That's a one-way relationship. And there's no love, solidarity, or continuity there. And we need to avoid that in the future. That is why a community radio station, community ownership, community governance, that is what we need to do moving forward. That's what the Green Party is for. It's what we would do if given power. And if elected, I would do it too. So with that, thank you very much for listening. I'll just throw it. There are more the cover, more responses, more or less. One is a deeper one that, we're fighting for system change, and electing the lesser evil doesn't do that. And there's other responses from Black Agenda Radio. So these are particularly left-wingers who are Black, giving their take, and how many of them are registering Dem to vote for Bernie, but will go back to Green as soon as their primary is over. And I know many people who are doing that. There are many Green activists doing that, actually. So when I first heard of that a few times, I was actually a little disheartened because I didn't plan to. But now I'm wondering if I'm going to feel left out when the New York primary comes around. I don't know. But it's kind of not what I'm worried about right now. There's a lot more to work on, do a lot of other projects I'm doing. Might be joining a band this year. Might be doing more gardening. But gardening without class struggle, no, sorry. Ecology without class struggle is just gardening, and I don't want to do just gardening. Okay. Come on. All right. Good luck and have a great weekend, everybody.